just not aligned with the hostile takeover that happened. So those generals that were Ukrainians 5 minutes ago, they have Ukrainian armaments as well.
Okay. Well, Mr. Conaway serves on the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee. Based on those posts, what do you know?
Well, we know that the arms are coming from Russia. We know that the elections that were held, that the areas where the Russians did not want people to vote, they did not vote. We know that there's incredible atrocities going on from open source reporting that are of the most heinous nature. It's not just setting a car on fire in the middle of the street and those kinds of things. There's some really bad things going on in Ukraine perpetrated by the separatists. I was told yesterday, and it was a closed meeting, but it wasn't a secret meeting from General Clark, that Putin has recruited every thug he can find in Russia to move into Ukraine and have them just join up with the separatists and do what they want to. There's separatist violence on separatists. There's some really horrible things they've done to each other. So these are not good guys, and they're killing people and causing a great deal of misery for the folks in eastern Ukraine, and Putin could stop it.
Ted, Brandon, Florida, Democratic caller.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I'm a 30-year listener of C-SPAN, and yes, I'd like to ask the representative, when will we ever have an audit for the Pentagon? I read an article a few months ago stating that there were approximately $2 to $6 trillion wasted. And
well, thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. That is right in my wheelhouse. I've been working with the Department of Defense for 4 years now plus, trying to continue to push on them to get it audited. We made great strides when Leon Panetta took over as Secretary of Defense and made it a top priority. Secretary Hagel has continued that top priority. And so we're making progress on it. It's not going anywhere near as quickly as any of us would like to. The law says they'll have it auditable books for fiscal year 2017, be audited in 2018. They're making some steps that show progress. The commitment is there. Their resources are there to make this happen, and so they're working at it. But as you would expect, if you've not created a financial system that's with a view toward being able to audit it, then you put in place a system that's not auditable. So it's taken them a while to get systems in place that, in fact, we can audit for a reasonable price, and that work is going on. It's an incredibly complicated issue, but very important, and one that is one that I'm staying on as a part of as my role on the Armed Services Committee is to continue to shepherd this initiative forward, and we are making some progress. It's not going as fast as you and I would like it. It's not going as fast as the folks in the Pentagon would like it to go. But from what I can tell now, the momentum to get this done is in place. Part of my job is to make sure that momentum is maintained in the face of some really incredible tough stuff that we've put the Department of Defense through with sequestration and cuts and CRs and an awful lot of turmoil over there that's not directly related to how they do their business. The numbers you spoke, I think, would have to be over a million-year period. I don't think anywhere near the scope of that. But the Department of Defense, until they get that good housekeeping seal of approval, so to speak, can't tell us that that's not happening. So you and I are on the same side on this issue, and I think the Pentagon is trying to make it happen, and we're working on our side of the river with the oversight and trying to help them make sure they've got what they need to make that happen, because it really is important. I appreciate you paying attention to that.
Here's Roy on Twitter. Strengthen NATO allies by what? Based on what you said earlier, and he's wondering, does it mean throwing money at them to buy American arms?
No, not necessarily. I think we could, doing joint exercises and having people in place. This administration did move some assets around as kind of a show of force, but strengthen the allies to make sure they know how important it is. I think the shoot down of this jet will help our NATO allies say, we really do need, better options to make the things happen that we need to have. But they're not really set up to take care of a nation that's not a part of NATO, and that's part of the reason why Putin has gone after him, is he does not want Ukraine joining the NATO. And so but joint exercises and additional equipment, a real look at making sure we've got the right number of people based in Europe. I mean, we've got this constant tug of war between how much we're spending and where we're spending it, where those troops are, where they're not, or where they're based, and all those kind of good things. But it is strategically important for us to have troops in place where they can deploy. They've been deploying into Afghanistan from there and that kind of thing. So it helps us refocus on what we should have in terms of assets in Germany and other places to back the NATO partners.
If U.S. pushes this way, helping the Ukrainian military, doing joint exercises with NATO, etc., does that jeopardize at all the Iranian negotiations that are happening with Russia and the other countries for some sort of nuclear deal?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you don't get to do these things in a silo. As I mentioned earlier, Israel should be helping folks in Ukraine, but they're trying to do a deal with Russia, and so they don't want to be pushing back. I mean, all these self-interest things get balled into, and clearly the negotiation with Iran are really important. How does Iran's efforts in Iraq to try to stop ISIL factor into the negotiations? So it's a tough chess game, a three-dimensional game that we're all continuing to try to play, and it's not easy to make to make the right decisions and to try to see as far in advance that tinkers to Everest to chance as to what you do, what the other guys are going to do, and those kind of things. All at the same time, because we don't get to just talk about Ukraine and then separate all the other things where we're dealing with Russia from that.
What grade would you give Secretary of State John Kerry on his efforts?
Well, they probably haven't graded the test yet. He's a great effort. He's in the fight trying to make it happen. His team's a little loose and free with comments they shouldn't be making. They shouldn't be talking about hurting Israel or whatever, and they shouldn't be trying to bully Israel into doing something that's not in Israel's best interest. But I think it's the clock is still running on the exam time for him.
Ellenton, Florida, Victoria, Republican caller. Good morning to you, Victoria.
Thank you for taking my call. My observation has been with America, and I love America. But after World War II, America became the powerhouse militarily to protect the European nations, and we did a wonderful job over there and restoring all those nations. And
so, Victoria, should that happen now?
That, we are now put in a box because militarily we are financially drained to help Israel, Ukraine, and I think Eisenhower forewarned us about our military complex and getting into nations and to be more selective and to support those who, backed us with our military strength. And now that we are weak, they have become weak because we were so strong, and now we're faced with a dilemma.
Well, we are faced with a dilemma. The interesting thing is that the weaker the United States military becomes, the less safe the world becomes. And so there is a direct cause and effect there. We have coming off of a multi-year war in Iraq and a multi-year war in Afghanistan. Our troops are tired and weary. They are still the strongest, most lethal, best trained, best led, best equipped fighting force on the face of the earth. No question about that. But we're going in the wrong direction. We need to make better investments. We need to eliminate sequestration and the threat of that pending for the Department of Defense, because many things that they do over there are multi-year plans. They've got to decide weapon systems far in advance and a lot of things like that. And with sequestration looming out there, they really can't make the proper plans that they need to be doing. And we've created this turmoil, as I mentioned earlier, to the caller about the audit. So our nation faces a point where we need to decide, do we properly invest? And the one thing that most every single American would agree is a federal government responsibility, and that is to provide for a Navy and defend this country and the Army. So we're not doing that properly. We're going in the wrong directions under this president's leadership, and we need to turn that around. And it will not be easy because we do have some financial constraints, and we'll have to make some hard choices and set priorities. I think we spend money in other areas that shouldn't get spent, and it should be spent on our military, and we ought to eliminate as much of the uncertainty as we can with respect to how their funding streams will look over the next 10 years, because it's really important that America have the strongest and maintain that position of being the strongest, most capable military force on the face of the earth, because the rest of the world is safer when that happens, and we are safer when that happens.
We'll go to Jim next. Wilton, New Hampshire, independent caller.